Hello and welcome to the Low Code Podcast. I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack, and we are the global specialists in OutSystems recruitment. With this podcast, our aim is to increase awareness and appreciation of OutSystems and its impact and benefits to the market, and our early adoption is giving competitive edge to businesses worldwide. During our podcast, myself and my colleague Sushil Chauhan will be speaking to IT leaders and OutSystems MVPs on how OutSystems has transformed their businesses and careers. We also hope that by speaking to MVPs on their career journeys, we can inspire developers from all over the world to learn from others who have already been on the path. So let's go.
Hello, welcome to a latest episode of Low Code Podcast. Today I have with me Tiffany Lauria, who is the Director of Application Development at Constellation, a Minnesota-based business involved in medical, professional liability insurance and health service companies. So welcome, Tiffany.
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing? How are you today?
Great. It's a lovely day.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So I want to start the interview, Laura, with maybe just talking a little bit about yourself, your background, and then a little bit about the company, what they do. So that'd be great to kick off with that.
Perfect. Great. So I've only been at Constellation about 2.5 years. My entire career before that was actually spent at Target. Those in the US are very familiar with Target as one of the biggest retailers, a big competitor to Walmart. And when I was at Target, a lot of the things I did were very technology based. I started right out of college doing things such as project management, Scrum Master, things such as that. Right. And then I continued to grow there. I decided, well, I'd like to discover more the product side of things. Product management is obviously a big upcoming way of organizing. And so I moved over into the product manager role. I was not looking for a position at the time, and Constellation called saying we have this role, and I was intrigued. It was definitely a company I had never heard of. Many in the US will not have heard of it either. It is a medical professional liability company. A lot of people might say, well, what is that? That is the liability insurance that all of our healthcare providers carry for when an unfortunate event happens or when a certain thing happens. So patient gets an infection in the hospital, they believe the physician did something wrong and did not meet the standard of care. We are the insurance company behind them, helping to defend or go to court for them, essentially.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense now.
Yes. So definitely not super uplifting stories we hear all the time when harm events come. Those parts are very sad. But the other part that really intrigued me about Constellation is it was a company that not only was benchmarking itself against other MPL companies, it is a very niche insurance piece. It's not like a general liability workers' comp, but they're looking at benchmarking themselves against all of insurance. And so looking at Progressive or other Geico, other big insurance companies and things they're doing to make themselves digital forward. So what I was brought into Constellation to do was really to create a digital presence that wasn't just a place for you to go pay your bill online, but how can we really make lives better for our insureds and our internal team members?
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And I think the company's been going for a few years now. Is that right?
It's been much longer than that. It's actually been since the mid 80s. It's been
really?
around. It started as a collection of physicians that wanted to basically insure themselves and then turned into a company. It actually is made up of 3 different brands.
Oh, I see. Okay. Great. Okay. And so you were brought in to sort of look at things, and what was your first kind of what were the problems that you faced, and how did you think about solving those?
The initial parts were, I would say, very non-glamorous parts. It was things such as replatforming our websites onto more modern technology, in addition to the portal where customers go do things such as paying their bills, getting their policy forms, and filing a claim. So it really was modernizing that. We also are moving our entire company to the cloud. We use AWS as our platform stack. And so doing a lot of that, because a lot of that stuff hadn't been rewritten ever. Getting our security and infrastructure on par with the more modern world was really where we started. And then in addition, as I came into the organization, I had the luxury of having a newer IT team as well. So people that were open to new ways of doing things that hadn't been there a very long time. Okay. And so we started implementing hack days, where every other month or once a quarter, we could get together as a team and start solving what real business problems were out there. And that was something the company never had before. And in 2 days, being able to say, hey, we delivered this thing was definitely a huge win. And it was a way for us to start culturally, internally, getting our business comfortable with doing things differently, and not taking 4 months to add a value in a drop down, as an example.
Okay. So it sounds like part of the problem was just sort of modernization, really,
Totally.
and making the processes digital, saving time, making them more efficient for all the users and the end users as well. So
Absolutely.
So what was your what type of solutions were you looking at, and how did you come across OutSystems? And maybe you want to say a little bit about OutSystems and low code generally for people
Absolutely.
who haven't heard of this. So
anyone that's listening that hasn't heard of OutSystems, I hadn't heard of them either before about a year and a half ago. So I would say, and I've been sharing with others as I talk to former colleagues at Target saying, have you heard of OutSystems? A lot of times the answer is no. So it definitely is something that's a little more cutting edge and things that we're looking at to help solve problems of the future. So when we looked at a low code platform, we were trying to figure out, we only have, so in IT, we have about 20 people. 5 of them are what you would call a traditional developer. They know your coding languages, they're front end, back end, full stack engineers. The other 15 that we have don't. They might do configuration of a tool, but really they're like low level coding background is very non-existent, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we were trying to figure out is how can we enable a team of 20 now instead of a team of 5 to really do coding that we need and solve for customer problems. A lot of people, when they assess low code, they think about like a business analyst or even less technology related person doing these changes. I would say our company is not at that point. We're not at a point where we're looking at our underwriters going in and using a low code technology, but we wanted to go from 5 to 20, which we felt was a really good increase. And so when we did our assessments, we compared OutSystems and Mendex were the 2 that we had looked at for our low code platforms. I know others have come into the space since then, but those are the 2 we chose. And we went through a process where it was a half-day session with both of the teams to really see what they can do. And we put a challenge in front of them to say, we want you to create this thing. And the thing we put in front of them was a front desk application that could be used on an iPad or a tablet to check in people and then auto notify that someone's waiting there at the front desk. Right. It seems very simple, but something that takes a lot of time. And I mean, I call it a wedding guest book. So when you go to a wedding and you sign your name that you were there, it was very much a system like that, very paper-based, not keeping track. And so that's really what we had them solve. And so through, of course, looking at the monetary license structure and looking at what they could do, we landed on OutSystems as our vendor. Okay. From there, what we had the team do was we actually had all of IT, so all 20 folks, not just the 5, go through the week-long boot camp where someone from OutSystems comes and gives training, and it's just hands-on activities where they can walk through different scenarios that OutSystems puts in front. And then at the end, the team all had the opportunity to take the certification if they so choose, or take it anyways and just see how much knowledge they really have. In addition, our company is very, very focused on personal development. And so after the OutSystems event happened and the boot camp and the certifications, our entire team was actually given 12 personal hack days for the year where they could spend hacking and digging into technology unrelated to their day-to-day job. And we actually found a lot of those people, OutSystems was a way for them to like dip their toes in coding without having to know something super deep, which was really cool. And then I mentioned hack days. The other thing we did was the next hack day after the OutSystems boot camp was we're solving these problems only using OutSystems. So it was a way for us to directly, if you learn something and directly apply it, you catch on to it much better. And so OutSystems provided 2 engineers that actually sat with us in a room pre-COVID for 2 days where we actually were to solve things with it, which was an awesome way to apply what we had learned right away.
Wow. So they've obviously given a lot of really great support there for you. So
Yep.
So in terms of the actual, when you got down to the nitty-gritty and say, right, these are the problems we've got to solve now, what were the kind of problems and how did that sort of process go?
I would say there's two that we have heavily considered or implemented OutSystem or low code with. One was an application for our customer acquisition or our sales team. They're out, obviously pre-COVID again, meeting with physicians, meeting with hospital administrators. And a lot of times they don't have access to Wi-Fi. They get into a hospital, it's very thick walls and things such as that. And so it was, well, how can we enable them with an app on their iPad, whether that's a PWA or a tablet native app, where they can go in and see all the information that they need. That application actually was deployed and put out there. Unfortunately, as it was deployed, COVID then kind of hit, and then you weren't going into hospitals. We also had another app that we were using different technology that kind of did the same thing. So we actually made the decision, we won't continue with the OutSystems app. Great learnings, great understanding what they needed, but we combined it with the other one. And not going into hospitals made it a bit obsolete at that time.
Fair enough.
The great news, we didn't spend a lot of time on it because it's so easy to spin things up. The other one that's the most exciting one, and if folks are out on the OutSystems site, they'll see that a case study was actually created on this particular use case. And this was a program that we have. It's a support program where any of our insureds that are going through a harm event, maybe they're getting sued or maybe a potential claim, we offer support for them, just as someone to talk to that may or may not have been through the process, and just helping to coach them or work through one of potentially the hardest parts of their entire life that they'll go through. And so the problem we were trying to solve is, again, things were very paper-based. So if we said someone needed something, we'd fill out a form. The form actually wasn't handwritten. However, it was done manually in Word, which is almost the same thing. The form was filled out. The form was, emailed from here to there and there to there. And then by the time we were ready to engage a physician to talk to one of our insureds, it was someone picking up their cell phone and manually typing a text message saying, hey, I've got this thing, go check your email. Or an email saying, hey, here's this thing, go follow up. So we really look to how we can digitize this for them. We started this work in July, I want to say. And by October, we had something that they were using in their hands. And if you've got traditional developers listening, that's very fast.
That's very fast.
It seems a few months seems kind of long unless you're in the industry and that's pretty quick. And so what we were able to do is we actually integrated this new app with our current system where these forms are held, where we digitize the forms. So we took away a lot of the rework of retyping things. We were able to press a button, take info from here, put it here. And so the problem from the physician standpoint that we were trying to solve is a lot of times they're not in front of their computer. We would send these things to them via their company email address, which they're on Gmail all the time. They're not on their company email address. And so on our side, we were actually able to automate a message that goes automatically to them, pushing a button, customized to them, saying, hey, Sarah, here's a request for you via text and email with one click of a button. So when we think about the ease and quickness that we can get to our physicians to start reaching out to the insured, it's very fast. The other thing we found is that originally the question was, thought was, I want a mobile app. We all know, I know anyways, I've heard a lot of industry statistics that say a lot of people actually don't want to download a mobile app on their phone anymore. They don't want that crap on their phone. They don't want to download something and all of that.
Hundreds of apps,
right? I mean, you have 12 pages of apps on your phone.
Exactly,
and so we went in with the assumption as we wanted it to be available anywhere without thinking it had to be a mobile app. And so that led us to a PWA concept. The great news is OutSystems made that very easy. We didn't have to design a desktop app and a mobile app. We designed a desktop one essentially that worked as a PWA. And so we do have a progressive web app available. Essentially, it's bookmarking a website on your phone instead of having to download something. So they're able to get that quickly. On the physician side, now when they access, they can see all the people that have been assigned to them. We've enabled the same thing where we have a one-click text and email concept. So in the past, a physician would sit down at their computer and write maybe a paragraph pretty much the same paragraph to every single person, just saying, hi, Alex, instead of hi, Bob, and send that out. So instead we've automated all of that. Essentially, it's a mail merge template that says, here's our, standard wording. And once you send that out, it replaces the physician's name to Sarah, if Sarah's the one sending it out. That made it really quick. So that integration is actually with Twilio. So the great news is our OutSystems app can integrate with our internal portal that we have, as well as Twilio. And recently what we just implemented, which is really cool, is not only can we indicate we've sent a text message, but we actually now have statuses that tell us if it was sent, delivered, or read. So now we can really see, oh, they've actually seen it. Maybe they haven't replied, but at least they've seen it. The other parts of the app that we have are notes. So they can take confidential notes of their conversation. As the insurance carrier, I don't want to know what they're talking about, but I want to make sure they're getting support. So I don't need to have visibility to the words that are said. So it gives them a place to keep track, just so they know what to talk about next time. And then lastly, the other huge efficiency play that we have here is around time tracking. So these physicians are very valuable. Their time is very valuable. So instead of them having to send us an email, keep track on a sheet of paper, I talked to Bob for 20 minutes, et cetera. Then I have to add up my hourly rate times 20 minutes, doing all the math. We do that for them. Right. So we keep track of their hourly rate. They put in the number of minutes or hours, they press submit. And then on the first of the month, we just auto generate invoices for them. So now we're in the first month alone, which doesn't represent all of the insureds we're helping, we save 4 hours already. And we start adding that up over time, and that really compounds. We're going to see
saves a lot of
huge
admin
returns
for these guys who are busy, as you said.
That's not helpful.
Doing work.
For a general physician, that's not helpful. Exactly.
It's really boring as well. So
exactly.
for the best of us, even the people that are supposed to be doing it. So.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so that's great. And so really streamlined the process there for internal users, end users, the people in between. I assume that you've got the people inside your organization, you've got the insurers, then you've got the clinicians,
right?
All those three people in the chain. The whole thing's automated back and forth, including the invoicing and everything. So, so yeah, there's that. So that must have been a really great, especially if you're dealing with lots and lots. And as the volume goes up, it all starts to add up, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Huge amount, so.
Yep.
Brilliant. And so in terms of the involvement of the staff, I mean, you said you had 5 kind of core developers who were traditional, what you describe as traditional code, as opposed to low code. And then you've got these other guys, another 15 or so people. So what was the kind of involvement of each of these two groups in actually getting the solution live?
The very interesting part about this is we had a team of one as we got started. And that team of one was actually someone that was one of the most skilled developers. So lots of AI, ML knowledge, very, very skilled developer. He was actually the one that chose OutSystems, which I think is rather interesting, considering OutSystems is for people that are not quite as technically inclined. He found it, front-end coding is not his skill set. That's not what he's strongest at. And so he found OutSystems as a way of, well, I know the back-end stuff, but it gives me a way of really quickly spinning up a UI that they can use. We've added another person since, which again is a traditional developer. But I think the biggest benefit that I've seen is the other half of my team really manages a core system, the configuration of it, and more the infrastructure side of things versus a traditional developer. And I was able to, one person in particular, I was able to assign things to him. And within 2 days, he was already making changes to the app and has gotten up to speed. So when you think about a transition as well, it pretty much felt non-existent to me. It felt like very, very seamless, and he could jump in there right away. As we continue to evolve the app and get more feedback and figure out other places to integrate, I only see that getting bigger and being able to integrate and add other people too.
So it sounds like the process is very easy in terms of getting it all done. And also, I mean, normally when you're involved in some type of change in an organization, whether that be a digital transformation or development of a new app or something like that, any small variation within that process needs a lot of review and
Exactly.
a lot of like, where does, how does it go down the chain, and is there any security implications of data
Right.
and things like that? So in terms of the OutSystems solution, it sounds like a lot of those things were taken care of.
OutSystems definitely takes care of a lot of that. The one downside I would see, or the thing that I think we would struggle with more, is if we had more integrations with more of our core systems. So right now we're not integrating at all with any of our core systems that manage policies and claims and things such as that. But as we look to expand it and make it more robust, that's I think where that's where I think we would need more of the traditional developer to help as it relates to that, less so on the app, the PWA that our physicians are going into.
Okay, so it's like almost like a kind of standalone at the moment.
Totally. Yes.
And then the future plans maybe to integrate that into your ERP system or whatever it is you're using.
Exactly.
And in terms of the, it's interesting you say about the solution was chosen by one of your most senior developers, as you said. We've spoken to lots of different teams and lots of different people, and there's varying reactions from varying people, in terms of adoption and things like that. Sometimes, usually the guys who've been like hardcore developers, they view it with some level of suspicion, or
we heard that
sure
too
about this or whatever. So, and then there's a kind of gradual adoption, whereas the other kind of more business oriented people who are more business focused rather than coding focused, if you like, they tend to be more easily convinced or easily easy adopt. So how is it for you and your organization? How did that all go down?
So like I mentioned, we've rolled it out to the technology team. We've not broached any of our business people at this point. We heard the same thing. Our traditional developers were like, well, I can do that easier using traditional methods, which might be true. We do have people that really know, so it might be true versus learning a new tool. However, we are seeing the other 15 people really using it. We had someone do a personal hack day around stock tracking and some of the stocks that he owned and how that app might be able to do that. We actually did create and implement the front desk tool, which was not created by one of the 5 people that were more traditional. And we're just seeing people get a little bit more comfortable jumping in there. Myself, I don't have a traditional development background. I've been more in like the project management, product management world. I was able to get in there. The app we had for customer acquisition during our hack day, I owned what the UI looks like. And using, I use some of the OutSystems templates, but it gives you a way to get a little bit more confident in the things that you're doing. And then of course, ask for help where needed.
Yeah. And the whole thing you said was pretty quick. It was like a few months or something, was it? From start to finish?
Yeah, we started in July and by October they were using it.
Wow.
Yep. And we do regular updates as well.
Yeah.
Enhancements.
And what kind of feedback have you had from kind of the end users, like the clinicians and all the guys in between, the insurance companies? What's been their feedback on the whole thing?
In my most humble voice I can use, they're ecstatic. The amount of feedback we've gotten just on the time tracking alone, sometimes they wouldn't tell us how much time they had spent for months because it was such a daunting task to sit down and do all the math and send it back in the template that we required. And so that feedback has been great. Yes, absolutely. We've had hiccups along the way where maybe a request isn't sent timely or they didn't get a notification of a request. But one of our physicians in particular, he actually is a full-time practicing physician. And he continues to remind us like how much of a time savings this is. So he's still able to do this on the side, but it doesn't feel like an admin task on the side. He actually feels like he's able to help people and spend more time with them.
And I suppose, if there's any other, I don't know if there's any other organizations who are kind of doing anything similar to you, but if I was an end customer, or a clinician, I'll be thinking, I'd much rather work with you guys because everything's so easy, so much easier, than having to go through all this trudgery with everyone else. So
yeah, that's the goal. We don't have a huge pool of physicians right now, and we want to look at expanding that. And I hope that this will help enable us to do that.
Brilliant. Okay. So I don't know if you what your involvement is in terms of the ongoing things, in terms of like, I mean, looking at OutSystems. I don't know if you were involved in their next step that they did. I think they did an online one last year, the next step thing where they announced all the new features and the new things that they're doing. And some of that is some work builder functions, work stream functions, things like that. Don't know if you know anything about those and whether any of that is going to be part of your plans. I mean, the other areas I think that people are talking about a lot of things like, the AI stuff, the RPA stuff. Do you have any thoughts about any of that, and maybe how that might end up being incorporated in some of the things you do?
I'm not quite sure how some of those experience builder or the workflow builder tools will impact us at this point. I have actually this week just passed along more information to the team on, hey, look at this new stuff that we have and you might want to use it. We are right now, I mean, when I say we're going through a company transformation, that's probably an understatement. We're completely looking at redesigning our business process and how we do work. And so I don't know how OutSystems might fit. However, a lot of the business use cases that are coming up and that we're starting to talk about, a lot of people are saying we might be able to use OutSystems for that. So I think we're just at the beginning of seeing really where this might take off, especially as people are getting more involved in the app that we've already built. So I think we have yet to see what that might look like in the future, but I do think there are places where we can definitely apply it.
And I'll be interested to know, Tiffany, what your thoughts are generally on the sort of the IT landscape in the future, because in our opinion, I mean, the reason why iTrack got involved with this low code and OutSystems was we felt like this was the time of low code. I mean, there's low code's been around for so many years, but it seems there are a number of things now coming together simultaneously to really bring these type of solutions to the front and actually think, well, actually, these are now enterprise solutions. They're not just localized apps and localized solutions. These are real enterprise solutions solving big problems for companies. To us, it seems like the time is here. It's the right time. And when you look at all these different reports, Gartner, Forrester, or whatever, they talk about low code and how it's going to be a really big factor in the future of things. One question I always like to ask our guests is, what's your thoughts on these things, and do you think do you have any sort of opinions about that?
I absolutely think that this is something that is going to take traction, especially as it relates to big enterprise level companies. We are such a small company. We don't have traditional roles like a business analyst or things such as that. But when you start looking at roles that are more just process related, or someone that maybe has a very narrow focus, or even when we look at our user experience folks that we're bringing in, the ability for them to have a tool like low code to do prototyping with, or things like that, or actually do the setup of the app initially, and then someone else comes in and helps hook it up to the places that need to be hooked up. That's, I really think, where we're going to see a lot of advancement. The other thing is just personally, our former CTO that we had on my review was, I want to see you building stuff in low code. So I think the expectations as well of technologists and what we're doing in technology isn't just, oh, well, the traditional developers over here do the coding. I think that expectation's changing. When you think about the value of your money and what you're paying people, you really want them to be able to jump in and help create stuff and do stuff. So I definitely see that increasing. I'm hopeful that that's what we see, because I would love to bring in a UX person that can create. I'm actually interviewing folks now, and we ask that question: do they have low code experience? Do they know what that is? And whether that's OutSystems or any of the other companies, I'm interested in that, because I think that would be helpful. And it's one less thing. Why waste a traditional developer's time making sure something's at the right pixel over here or over there, when that's something they can maybe just do themselves? Yeah,
that's quite a good summary, I think, a good outlook. And I think it's definitely the case that especially the more, as you said, you see your CEO or your CTO, they have these kind of more of a business outlook, don't they? They're looking at the business thing. So it's really how how the low code sort of interacts with solving these business problems as well, I think. So in the past, it may have been like the IT department was a bit of an esoteric bubble where nobody knew what was really going on. And then 3 months later, something would appear. And now it seems like we have a lot of frequent exposure of things in between at a lot earlier stages and things like that. So, and people always love that, business people. So that's great. So thanks, Tiffany. That's been really, really nice to hear your experiences and your views on things. I hope we can catch up again. Maybe it'll be interesting to follow your journey and to see how things go in the future. And maybe by that time we would have been out of lockdown and pandemic and everything else. But it'd be great to catch up. So brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Low Code Podcast, hosted by iTrack, Global OutSystems recruitment specialist. Be sure to subscribe and see you next time.